try me, always still right by me. Make living lively, highly spoken of, my only love, the only one. You're my wifey, make my life complete, sweet. But you know when the flip is street freak, but only when it comes to me. See, that's why you're my wifey. Make my life complete, sweet. But you know when the flip is street freak, but only when it comes to me. See, that's why you're my wifey.
Guess I should've known, 'cause you had my mind blown. Oh, oh, from the jump, at the club on bump like what? I had to have you, babe. Saw you outside, passenger side, 'cause I let my best friend drive. You was in line. That's when you caught my eye, girl. Hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo.
You were so beautiful,
Beautiful.
you were so critical,
So critical.
you look so crucial, girl.
It's something about you, it's everything you are.
Hey yo, hey yo, still right by me. Make living lively, highly
Spoken of, my only love, the only one.
you're my wifey. Make my life complete, sweet. You know when the flip is street free, only when it comes to me.
Wifey.
That's why you're my wifey. You know you're sexy too. I like your attitude.
Hey yo.
Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for today. This is a continuation of my Supercharge testing series, well actually the end of it. This is the 50% Supercharge testing that you guys wanted before. So we've got 20 Supercharges tested. There's a few ones, we're going to keep all housekeeping things out of the way first. So a continuation of the 100% one. There's going to be Supercharges in this list and in the previous video where the testing scenarios that I set up aren't going to be, the best case scenarios. There's ways, like say with Call of the Deep, with High Tide and Shark Frenzy to make it always crit, using like Offering on Grand Summoning, positioning wise, splitting wise, like how I tested Berserk. So there's going to be situations where you're going to get a better result if you do it personally. This is just basically like a baseline test. I'm doing the exact same thing with each one. So as like a worst case scenario, or if a new player doesn't know how to maximize the potential of a supercharge, which I'll show later in my in-depth guide series, this will be a way to be able to see its potential damage, at a baseline comparison. There's a few supercharges I didn't test. The form changes just because it's not realistic. Ice Elemental, Mass Hysteria, Wolf and Gorilla, Arbiter, Destiny, a few others like Dog Form, stuff like that. These ones, they have certain buffs inside the supercharge, but other than that, it's not going to be conducive to actual testing for damage wise. And same thing with Nature's Rampage and Rage's Infuriate. That's just a crit increases. It doesn't do actually any damage itself. So I picked just offensive supercharges rather than utility ones or defensive or the form change ones. So those are the ones I tested. So we can kind of jump into the results here. The only other thing I'll note is they changed Rage Berserk a few months ago in how it splits. So Rage doesn't give a good indication of what Rage's Berserk's potential is on like 8 targets on these sparring targets, just because of how they changed the splitting. It does much better on 3 targets, 3 to 8 in that range where you're realistically going to see ads and hallways and stuff like that. So I tested Berserk on 3 targets just so you actually could see its potential in 3 targets as opposed to the other ones. Neo Venom and Circuit Breaker I used like the electric rotation that I use in my guide series, so you know what the rotation was, and then basically I just did 3 parses of that rotation to get an average, and then I did the same thing. So when I tested Circuit Breaker, I did the exact same rotation, just using Circuit Breaker and Sply, stuff like that, and Trinket. And then basically I took that damage from that parser, subtracted it from my baseline rotation, and that got me the difference of not using Circuit Breaker to Circuit Breaker. Same thing with New Venom. So that's how I got those numbers. Probably not the most ideal way to test it, but that's the easiest way I could test it to give you guys an indication of its damage just itself, the Supercharge. Because Berserk, Neo Venom, Boost, and Circuit Breaker work a bit differently. Berserk is not so much of a damage, like a flat damage bonus, but it's gonna increase all the damage that you do within that 15-second window. The other annoying thing is that sorry, it's 12 seconds for Berserk. Circuit Breaker and Neo Venom. Circuit Breaker is a 55% flat damage buff for 15 seconds, and Neo Venom is 40% for 15 seconds. While I'm using 10-second parsers, so I can't get a 15-second parser. Can't use a 30. Can't use a 10. So basically, I just use the first 10. So even with these results, Neo Venom Boost and Circuit Breaker will be doing more damage than what these numbers are, just because how it's tested. Also, in terms of Cursed Idol testing, you get a bit of additional damage if the target's knocked out. You get like this secondary explosion damage. Obviously, I can't test on the sparring target, so Cursed Idol, most likely will be sitting higher than that damage result. So we can kind of get into it here. I wasn't going to test Polymorph just because it's technically form change, but it's not going to work on the sparring targets, obviously. So obviously that's at the very bottom. Not that any sorcerer would use Polymorph anyway. Used to use it in PvP until they fixed that. Carnivorous plants, deep freeze. Once again, you never really use it, considering the other ones. Atomic blast. I should note that the cooldown on Atomic Blast is like 0.5 seconds. So if you had a full Supercharge bar, you could spam 2 of these, within a second or two for some burst damage, and that'd be closer to like 400k damage between those two. So that's the note there. Atomic Blast just itself is pretty low end, like 188k average damage, but since its cooldown's pretty much instant, you have the ability to spam that back to back for that burst damage. Freeze Ray, once again, no one's really going to use it. Temporal Vortex for Quantum, you can use it in certain situations where you're not going to even get to use Oblivion, but obviously Oblivion, as you saw in the previous video, and as in the summary results, Oblivion is going to be a better option there. Cursed Idol, like I said, most Celestial DPS I know use Neo Venom Boost anyway. Sorcery, Transmigrification, same thing. Gadget's Asphyxiation Gas. The handy thing there, because Bunker Buster gadgets earn Supercharge a bit slower because we're not using a Supercharge generator in our rotation, so it's a lot better for gadgets to use like Neo Venom Boost or Asphyxiation Gas instead of waiting the entire time just to get one Bunker Buster in a raid. And then obviously 2 Asphyxiation Gas will be 400k, and 400k was more than one Bunker Buster anyway. Water's Whirlpool, Electric Megavolt, so that's why I see some electrics still using Megavolt. They all should be using Circuit Breaker. I guess the other thing I should mention, the other asterisks with these three, with Circuit Breaker, Neo Venom Boost, and Berserk, is that damage is solely dependent on you. So say you've got a block, you die, you get countered, any kind of interruption in your rotation. Overall, you're going to be losing damage because it's basically, since these are damage buffs, it's how much damage you're doing in that window, which is obvious. Let's see, Mounted Turret, which I knew was pretty good already. It's just it locks you in its animation, which is annoying. Fireball Barrage. So compare that, 245,000 times 2 because it's 50% supercharge versus Volcanic Calamity, which is 100%. Obviously, you're getting more damage from 2 Fireball Barrages. Blizzards is 263. That was my Neo Venom test, 290. Once again, that's just with the electric rotation, so that's more just a placeholder. But just understand that Neo Venom is just a flat 40% damage buff. So you'll be getting more damage than that depending on your power set and how you use it. Light Ballistic Assault. Ballistic Assault is a nice supercharge, but once again, like Mounted Turret, it sticks you in the animations. You can't really continue your rotation. Earth is Entomb, which we already knew, or most people already knew that it was an amazing supercharge, because Earthquake did a lot of damage before. It was like what, 500 or so. Earthquake was, and it was down there, 511,304. So we jump back there. Entomb's 309. So obviously, if you're doing 2 Entombs for 1 Earthquake, obviously because Earthquake's 10,000, Entomb's 50,000, you're getting over 600,000 with Entomb. So obviously, Entomb is a much better option than Earthquake. Rage's Mangle. Rage just has good supercharges in general. Electric circuit breaker right there, the results there. Here. So when I use circuit breaker, so basically we'll kind of jump back to these results here. So when I used my just regular electric rotation, I was at average 36, 36, 38. And then when I used circuit breaker, it was 721, 732, 711. So this was the actual damage I was doing with the supercharge. I was just subtracting the baseline rotation. So you actually knew it roughly that's how much damage I got from circuit breaker was 358K by using that calculation. And then Rage's Berserk on 3 targets, obviously, it's a 422,000, and that's a 50%er. It's almost, a million damage between the two. So jumping down here to the graph, obviously, it shows there. Nothing really stands out as surprising. Mangle used to be good anyway. It's just annoying because you're stuck in that animation. You can't continue your rotation. So even though Mangle is good, you got to think about it that, I'm stuck in that animation the entire time, or Berserk, you're just continuing your rotation. Circuit Breaker we knew was good anyway. Tomb we knew was really good. Ballistic Assault was going to be good anyway. It's just annoying, like I said, because you're stuck in the animation. So basically, jumping down here, this is going to be the overall summary of every supercharge I tested, which is a lot when taking a look at this list. That's 3 parsers for every single supercharge. That's a bit of time testing. And then we'll jump down to this graph here. So I combined them. So this is all 100% supercharges and 50% supercharges combined, all 31,150 might. Let's jump back here. See the whole graph. So obviously Oblivion was still up there. There's Earthquake at 511. Fires at 456. So Berserk here. So with Berserk being 422, that's a 50%er. So you got to times that by 2 basically, which puts it way above everything else, which we already knew Berserk was, probably the best supercharge out there. Let's see. The next 50%er we get is obviously Circuit Breaker, which is better than most 100%ers. Let's see, Rage's Mangle was already good. So there's Entombs. So Entombs 309. So technically we doubled that. We're 620,000, which already puts Entomb at better than Oblivion. Blizzard, Dehydrate, Bolt Barrage. Kind of just stands right there. So basically that's the overall picture of DCUO Supercharges. Just a reminder that, Berserk, that's a 50. Mangle's a 50. Entomb's a 50. New Venom's a 50. Blizzard's a 50. So there's some supercharges where since you get to use 2 of them, obviously 5,000 versus 10,000, the results are going to be a little bit more heavily favored towards those 50%ers. But there you go, guys. If there was any questions or comments, you can put them in the comment section below. My next video should be the Nature in-depth guide, now that all the supercharge testings are their way, and I can stop spending hours on test server. But there you go, guys. We'll kind of leave it at that. Take care.